Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I am Sharon.
I'm Christy.
Oh my goodness, it feels like it's been a hot minute since we've done a recording.
It has been.
We got to work on that.
Yeah.
And we are. But we've been revamping, looking at different things. So I think that's part of what it is. But one of the things is that oftentimes, as I said, every Sunday morning I do a talk at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Noom Vibe.
Called the chat.
It's called the chat. And each week I pick a different topic, to talk about and to kind of address. And this last week, a listener asked me if I would talk on interracial or cultural differences in relationships and stuff like that. And I thought it was an interesting topic and had quite a few people jump on and kind of share some ideas and thoughts. And, the thing is that whenever we use something called interracial or cultural differences, in there, we're already identifying the different components versus why don't we just say people with different backgrounds or whatever it is. But already in the thing, there's almost like not a negative, but a
Division.
very good. So anyway, we had this conversation and it turned out really good. But one of the things that I think really inspired it for me was also, or I should say, she had already sent this idea and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. But then I think I really loved was the Harvard graduate's speech.
Yeah,
And if you haven't listened to it,
you can find it online, the 2025 graduation.
Harvard graduate speech. And she did such an amazing job. And what I loved is she started it out with something to the effect, and don't quote me because I just listened to this once, but when she first went to Harvard, the amount of students from other countries, say 30, whatever it was. So it was a big amount of different countries. And she said she only knew them by the colors of how colorful the flags were and stuff like that. And then as she started this process and this journey, there was no longer that division.
Yeah, she goes into talking about the interconnectedness of all. And it was really cool because she talks about the fear and conflict that comes through that division.
Because we continue to look at people as different. And one of the things I emphasized on the chat was if we all go to the very common denominator, and that is we are human. Above all else, we are human. That is the greatest common denominator that we share.
Mm-hmm.
And in that being human is our humanity.
Yes.
And our humanity is what we do to thrive as humans.
Yes. As a human race, and it's not about a separation through color or
gender or orientation
Yeah.
or faith or culture itself.
Right.
But we continue, we look at outside, we don't ask. And one of the gentlemen who jumped on and talked, he's a black man. But as he was talking, he goes, most people would be surprised to find out that I'm Native American as well. And we had that conversation because nobody's going to know that piece of him because all they're going to do is look at him and see a black man. Because we have to have the conversation. We are more than just the surface.
Exactly.
And I think it's that fear, or I don't know why people are afraid of learning about other people. I don't understand that. I love it.
Sometimes, some people don't seem so approachable. I mean, we we had that the other day. I mean, you cannot judge a book by its cover. You even said that after we left the store. Remember, we were getting in line, and the lady, she looked like she was having a really bad day.
She looked cranky.
She did.
Let's call it what it is, cranky.
And she wasn't at all once, we got in line and she was checking us out and she was very friendly.
Exactly.
But you didn't expect that when you walked up there.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That was just one example. I don't know. Maybe there was some frustration before us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just how her face looks until she speaks. I don't know. But we learned something.
Yeah.
Got to stop doing that.
Yeah. You definitely cannot judge a book by its cover.
But I think we are in a place right now where we are seeing so much of that.
Yeah.
And it's sad to me because once again, we have more commonality than difference. But if all you're going to see is the color of my skin, you're never going to learn anything else about me. Or if all you see is who I love, we do not learn and we do not grow. If I am strong in my faith, then speaking to others about their faith should not rock my faith at all.
Hmm.
It should just expand on my faith.
Exactly. And I think that the way that we do that is to ask questions.
Exactly. And now, granted, when we look at some of these things, how we handle them, and whether it's somebody looking at us for the color of our skin or whatever. And I know for me, I have had racism in my life. I wish I hadn't, but I have had it. And I also try to understand. And, for me, a classic example of that was when we went to Alabama. And we'd only been there once or twice. And we meet a friend of your family's. She was an elderly woman. She was like in her 80s. And it wasn't, what is your name? It was just the oddest conversation because she looked at me. And so I give her kudos for that. She wasn't talking behind my back or doing nothing like that. She literally looked at me and with her southern accent, she says, "Well, you ain't one of them there Mexicans." She
Hmm.
goes, "No, you ain't Mexican." And I'm just kind of looking there like I'm not even sure how to respond to this because part of my cultural upbringing is you respect your elders. So I didn't go to a place where, oh my God, I'm going to no, because I wouldn't do that anyway. And then she goes, "No, I think you're one of them there Injans." Yeah, you're an Injan. Just sort of like,
Yeah.
I talked with Chris, I processed with Christy afterwards because I'm there like, what? What is this about? I don't understand.
They do things differently in the South.
Did that prevent me and this woman from having a cordial and friendly relationship? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because I think what she was doing, in essence, is she was asking the question. She just did it in more of a statement. Oh, I know what you aren't, but I'm going to guess this is what you are. But maybe in her mind, if it's not, then you'll correct me. Do
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I get that.
She was approaching the situation through the shade of glasses that she sees the world in, you know? That's how it goes.
So you talk about cultural difference. And I know for you, experiencing racism hasn't been a big thing for you,
Thank God. Yeah,
except
no.
one time.
Yeah. I don't find Birmingham to be the most welcoming of cities. So yeah, I've it's interesting going there because I feel like that they kind of just ignore me.
And literally, and because we were at a fast food place, we are getting some dinner. I was there with your brother, and the whole staff was African American. They looked African. I don't know, maybe they were
Yeah.
other things, so I
Yeah.
can't say that. But they were very polite, cordial with me, took my order, and as soon as Chrissy walked up, she actually just turned her back and they went to the back. They're talking about her. We can hear them.
Standing in the back, just watching me stand up there.
Nobody's immune to it, I think, is the thing, because we continue to promote fear and that divisiveness in order to prevent unity.
Yeah. And it's sad, I mean, I am grateful that I obviously that it's very little experience with that. But how sad and how it's so demeaning to people and that doesn't lift each other up and bring out the best in everyone.
No. So once again, we're looking at culture, we're looking at gender, we're seeing difference.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about, in order for us to have those interracial relationships or those cultural relationships, because this is what people understand, there are cultural differences even within an ethnic group.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you look in the United States at Caucasian people, The Caucasian from New York is going to look different than they can have different cultural norms than the ones in the South or in the West.
Mhm.
Same thing in the African American communities or the Latino communities. Latino communities, we are all very different. Our skin may look the same, but our cultures are not. So when people are talking to me, say about the Mexican culture, I'll tell them I only know what I've heard about it. It is not my culture, but I
Mhm.
can share stuff that I know about the culture or the Puerto Rican culture or whatever it is.
But people look at you and they're confused by that. So they think that you should know about that culture, even though
Mhm.
that's not your culture.
And I thought this was really cool. We were over at Walmart picking up some stuff, and as we're walking, there was a African American gentleman there standing there, and he had the cutest dog, and the dog had the cutest little booties, and that was so cute. So that's why I stopped and I said, "Oh my God, where did you get those booties for your dog? Because they were so little." And we have a Chihuahua, and sometimes it's hard to find her the little shoes, you know? Not that I think she would wear them. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But anyway, so I stopped to ask him that. And then as we were talking, he asked me, what is your ethnic background? He goes, do you have Native American? I go, yeah, I do. And he goes, I could tell by your skin color. And it was very nice. He paid a compliment, but he asked the question.
Mhm.
And this is the thing, we have to ask questions in order to get information.
Mhm.
If I am simply looking at you and drawing a conclusion, I'm never going to have inclusion.
And you're never going to have information. And
Exactly.
that's the thing. There's so much that people assume.
And when we're looking at relationship building, if it's interracial or cultural differences, the thing is the only way those relationships work is when I learn about that culture or I learn about that faith. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's how do I integrate that? How do I help it to integrate with what my beliefs are or my culture or whatever that is?
Or at least be able to respect that about them, even if it's not something that you're willing to, maybe it doesn't resonate with you on that level and it's something that you feel like you need to practice. I mean, being able to accept that someone else receives something from that and they are feeding their own soul with it. You know what I mean? That you can accept that about them.
And I think it's interesting because we come from different ethnic backgrounds
Mhm.
and cultural backgrounds. And, what's kind of interesting is your families, they're small
Mhm.
and they're not quiet, but it has a different sound and a different feel. I don't even know how to describe it. Whereas my family is big, lots of energy. And even understand in my family system, we can have a disagreement. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, okay, we're back off to the next thing. That was a little difficult for you to like at first.
Yeah, well, because I mean, with as much passion as you guys celebrate, you also can be passionate in your argument and disagreement about things. And I think just the energy of it sometimes is challenging, but I understand and I think it's great that you guys can have those conversations. And many times it ends up being that we agree to disagree and you just walk away from it. And it doesn't even have to be stated, we agree to disagree.
Mhm.
They just go on to the next thing and it's done.
Not in your family.
No, but we don't usually
They don't
get
talk about
into,
things.
yeah, don't get into things like that.
We don't talk about that stuff. Feelings, things like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
But I think it's interesting because I think, and even with our friends and stuff, just learning about the places that they come from and to me, the people you have in your life, that the more diversity you have, the more you learn and the more you grow.
The more well-rounded you will be.
Exactly. And we're fortunate because we have people with different in our friendship group they're different.
Yeah.
And it's great because then when we even bring them together, they all get along well.
Hmm.
I think even today, and once again, everybody who listens to us knows we don't get political and things like that. We don't. But one of the things is that we do have this big thing going with Democrats and Republicans and this and that. It's all a crock of crap. And what I mean by that is when you use a platform, either side, to promote something that's going to be detrimental to humanity, it doesn't matter who's putting it out there.
Hmm.
So you can align with whatever you want to, but at the end of the day, you have to, I think for everybody, we are making this division. But I think whether it's Democrat, Republican, Independent, Greenpeace, whatever else is out there, that they're all saying it's about the United States. It's about the people.
Hmm.
They're all coming about it from different angles. And if you disagree with that, fine, present your argument. Give information is all that it is, you know.
Hmm.
But once again, that divisiveness, that division, that somehow now if you're this, you're un-American. If you're this, you're American or more American. No, at the end of the day, everybody's an American.
Hmm.
But the thing is that's the beauty. We are allowed that ability to embrace other cultures, to embrace other ideas, to share our ideas.
We came here as a mix.
Yeah, there would be very few people here who are 100% indigenous now.
Hmm.
There are some,
Yeah.
but, or even when they're 80, 90%, that's pretty indigenous. But I think those are the things that we're looking at. Once again, when she was talking about fear and that division, when we're afraid of something because we don't know it, we will often promote it almost as hate.
And then it comes through as the conflict, like she talked about.
Yes, instead of coming at it as, I don't know this, I'd like to know what this is, it makes me uncomfortable
Hmm.
because I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That is to me a much better approach. And also, I'm still addressing that I may have some fear or apprehension because I don't know.
Well, and then once you ask the question, you have to be able to listen with an open mind.
It's kind of like when we went to Europe and we went to Paris. Before we went to Paris, a lot of people in the United States were saying, oh my God, those Parisians, they're rude, they're this, they're that. So I went and they're like, eek. And then they're going to steal from, I mean, there was a whole bunch of things people were telling us. And I was like, oh my goodness. So we went in with a little bit of what? Apprehension. And then our friend Sandra, who went with us, wanted to do a food tour. And we thought, okay, well, that sounds cool. So we did the food tour, which was great because there was only the three of us. And so the lady was telling us a lot of the history. And while we were doing that, a person walked by and did this once over with me. And they're like, oh my goodness. And she explained, she goes, that is not an insult here. And I go, what? She goes, they're really looking at you. They're looking you up and down. I said, so my thing is, I can do that back. And I did, well, in Paris. So I would do that. And nobody took it offensively. And you know what I found? In doing that, I actually was looking at the whole person. Whereas most times what we do is we will look at the or face or whatever body part a person likes.
Hmm.
You can tell because that's where their eyes go. This was a really interesting thing for me because I literally did that up and down and I saw the whole person.
Hmm.
It's fascinating to me. I'm always fascinated by people and
Well,
things.
both of us enjoy people watching, and that's one of the big things there. So a lot of the cafes, even they have out on the sidewalk a lot of tables out there, but the chairs aren't facing each other. They're most of the time both chairs are facing out because they're watching people as they pass by.
And it was really great because doing this food tour, this woman explained a lot of those cultural components.
Yeah.
And as soon as we learned them, they're like, oh my God, we want the table outside. Yeah, because we're going to people watch while we have our little coffees and do that. And it was fabulous.
Yeah.
And then we also didn't understand the other thing that was really interesting is she said, don't think that they're going to come and take your plates and stuff because they don't do that. You have to signal to them when you're done. I mean, had we not known that, we would have been there all night.
Yeah. Well, they pretty much, I guess, if you have
Reserve
your
a table.
reservation, you're there for the evening. They want you to talk about the food and enjoy it and really get into it. And it's not about rushing you out the door. Here's your ticket. That,
So
which is common here in the US.
yeah. Sometimes while you're still eating, they're taking your plate. Next. Once again, it's all of those things. But I think that if we had not had that food tour and
Mhm.
her explaining a lot of different things to us, I think that we might have had a different idea. So once again, it's also the thing of asking questions. And I have this where some kids will be friends, but then parents will say, well, you can't like them because they're this color or they're this religion or they like boys and they're a boy or they like girls and they'll have a lot of that. So then the kid is stuck in the middle because sometimes they really don't care.
Mhm.
But once again, now it's like, how do I keep my parents happy but how do I have friendships but it's not asking questions.
And that makes it especially difficult in people that are entering into relationships and it's two different cultural backgrounds of the families.
It's interesting. I was an activities coordinator a long time ago, and this young lady, she was from, I can't remember the country, she was from a Middle East country though. And she came in one day and she was very upset. And I said, what is wrong with you, girl? And she says, Miss Sharon, she said, my mom, our culture we don't shave our legs. I said, okay. But see, she was now a teenager and she was having PE and stuff. And so the kids would tease her a little bit.
Mm.
And she said, so this was her idea, people, because she so much wanted to fit in, but she didn't want to be disrespectful to their faith in that and their culture. So she thought she could just pour bleach on her dark hair and it would make it light so you couldn't see it. I said, oh, baby, you can't do that. I said, let me talk to mom. Let me talk to mom. So mom comes in and we had that conversation. She says, well, this is very important. I said, it is. I says, but how can you help her to integrate these two worlds that she has to navigate? And how can you help her to do it in a way? I said, what if we do it where the months that she has PE or summer, because sometimes she didn't have that. So she could have a whole semester where she doesn't show her legs. I was like, how about if on those times she lets the hair grow, but when it comes time that she has to be out in public, that she gets to shave her legs. And the mom looked at the daughter and says, would you be okay with that? And the daughter starts crying. Absolutely. There are ways to integrate. We have to help. It's like having one foot in and one foot out. When we have cultural differences, and I've seen that in the past where we have interracial marriages,
Mhm.
and one is very family oriented and the other is not. My ex did not understand why I was so family oriented, but that's what I grew up. I talked to my parents every day until they passed. I
Mhm.
talked to them on vacation. I, you knew it, you damn, and I told you, I said, I talk to my parents all the time. You weren't there like, oh, that's weird. But then you had to adjust to our cultures.
Yeah.
And not just my ethnic background, but the fact that you were from a city and
Mhm.
I was from the country.
Yeah.
I think that was hard for
It was. Yeah, for sure. I mean, but it was a learning experience for sure.
you. I don't know what she thought when my dad tells her, go get a shovel and start helping. Start digging that ditch.
Oh, just no burning ditches. That was the worst. Mm.
But these are things that you had never been exposed to.
Yeah, it was eye-opening, but
It's
I do have an appreciation for it, as we talked about. You're a more well-rounded person the more that you learn about. And so I don't hate that experience. Well, like I said, the burning ditches, but I'm grateful for that experience because I really do feel like that it taught me things.
And the hard part is to also understand that the individual can be so entrenched in their culture or living in the small town, and you'll see that a lot of times, whether it's city or small town, those same people, they do not leave that area. They are so attached to it.
It feels there's safety in it,
Yes,
you know.
I'm safe here. I know this. So therefore, they may look down on people who are from the city, or the city people may look down on people from the country. These differences are not really differences in the aspect at our core level. What they are is these constructs that have been developed over time that we prescribe to. So when we're looking at somebody from the city, say from the country, the only difference is there's very few differences. You still go to school. I still went to school. We still played sports, or you didn't play sports, but you know what I mean? We still made friendships, we still graduated. More commonality than burning a ditch.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Mhm.
But once again, it's easier for us to point out those differences
Right.
than if we go into every relationship saying, I am connecting with another human being on that basic level. I am connecting with this human being. I am human. They are human. Therefore, I start on common ground anyway.
And we can learn from one another.
Exactly. But then when we're trying to blend that together, if you're not going to take the time to learn that other culture, religion, whatever it is, and when we have people who marry different religions, in some religions, if you're not this religion, then you can't really marry in. You have to convert over to that religion. And some people do, and some people do it, but they don't want to. They
Mhm.
do it in that moment because they never have those conversations. And then later on, you will see issues in the relationship based on that.
Yeah.
If there's any form of racism in that family system and you do that interracial, it has the potential to create problems down the line because now that person, so it'd be like if my family didn't like you because you were Caucasian,
Mhm.
then now I'm going to have to be balancing like, oh crap, I want to be happy with you. I want to be happy with my family. So that person stays in constant turmoil.
Right.
It's not fair to them.
Mhm.
It really isn't.
That's why it's important to have those conversations. And it does, like I say, you have to have that open heart and open mind to be able to learn and accept things about people, even if it's not for you.
Exactly. And I think it's just a really interesting time,
Hmm.
where I feel like when I say this, I truly believe it. We have a majority of people who don't see color in that aspect, in a negative aspect. I really believe that with all of my heart and all of my being, that a majority of people do not see color, they don't see religion, they don't see gender, all of those kind of things. But we have that minority that does, and sometimes the ones with that speak the loudest are the ones that are heard. And so I know for a lot of people right now, they're afraid.
Hmm. Because those people are being kind of loud right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always tell people, look out your window, look at your neighborhood, look at the people that surround you, and that's what we focus on, being the best human that you can possibly be. Because if I'm being the best human I can possibly be, maybe when I encounter those people who are having some fear or apprehension about who I am based on my color, if I am coming from that place of humanness, then maybe that will resonate with them enough for them to not shout, but to hear and to feel.
Yeah.
Words can be powerful, but our energy signature is more powerful. What am I really putting out to the universe? What am I really putting out to those people that I'm engaging with?
Yeah. What do the people around you experience when they come up to you? Are you the cashier at the register with the grumpy look? How are you presenting to the world?
And sometimes I think even with that, sometimes when you see that and you, instead of judging the person or having that statement, it's a simple, hi, how are you today? And
They can flip everything.
yes. So it is in our human kindness.
That there was another perfect example of that when we were in Europe, because when we went to the bakery in Germany, the man that was there, he seemed so grumpy. He just,
He was from another country. I forget what country he was from, but
yeah,
he owned and operated a German bakery. And yeah, we were kind of afraid, but we really wanted the pastries.
but then we started talking to him.
Yeah, because then he asked, "Well, where are you from?" All this, and we started talking. And then, in fact, when we sat down to eat our pastry, he came and sat and talked with us, and so we had this wonderful conversation. But once again, we would have missed all those opportunities. The other thing I think about, and oh, I cherish this, cherish it, cherish it. We were in Puerto Vallarta, and we were going to go do their version of Cirque du Soleil. It's in the jungle. If you ever go there and you're going to have an excursion, go do this. It is beautiful. The auditorium is the jungle.
Outdoor. Hmm.
So anyway, we're going and we run into these two women and they're from Ghana. We don't know anything about Ghana, but I am telling you, they have hordes of mosquitoes. Take mosquito. So we had heard that. Well, they didn't get that message. So when we got there, oh, we're spraying away and they're over there slapping. And I looked at the lady and I go, would you like some of our off? She goes, oh God, yes. So that started this thing. I didn't care where they were from. I just cared that they were getting bit by mosquitoes.
Mm.
It had nothing to do. Anyway, we had the most fabulous time with these two women.
Yeah, that excursion was great. It was just, we had such a
Magical.
wonderful time with them.
And
Laughed so much.
I'm so grateful because we didn't look at their color, we didn't look at the country they were from, we didn't care what religion they were, we didn't none of that. On a human level, we connected and it was fabulous. But people, if we are so busy looking at the color or wondering what their political affiliation is or religious affiliation or this, that, or the other, socioeconomic status is another one. If we're so busy looking at that, we are cutting ourselves off from a huge part of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many wonderful, wonderful people from all walks of life, from every cultural background, ethnic background, gender, everything.
And so many wonderful experiences to be had when you're open and to having those conversations.
Exactly. And, embracing people where they're at. I don't have to agree with everything you say and do.
Yeah.
I just respect it's what your experience, that is your experience. It's not about trying to convince the other person. It's about sharing knowledge in order to have that growth. We have this big thing with the LGBTQ plus community, particularly transgenders. I think a lot of it is people really don't stop to get educated. True education, not propaganda,
Mm-hmm.
but people do not stop to understand that. And people sit there, well, there's only two genders. Well, we know that's not true. We have intersex people. Where do we count them as? They have both genders.
I was going to say, man, many people don't even know what that is.
Exactly. So when somebody says there's male and there's female, what about those other people? What do we categorize them as? There are some that are born with no gender. So what do we do with them? Because technically it's whatever, but you're not born with either one or with both. Or so there's more, there's such vastness in our humanity.
We're more fluid than we know.
There is so much color.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much beauty
Yeah.
in our humanness. And we limit ourselves on a daily basis because of somebody else's social constructs.
Right.
And it's up to all of us to choose. And I love at the end of this young lady's speech when she said what she realized is we are all connected. We are more connected. And if you have not watched her speech, watch it. And I love the story she talks about the washing machine.
Yeah.
Wonderful story that illustrates it beautifully. So I guess in all of this, the thing is in order to integrate, to have those interracial things, instead, let's not call them interracial, just let's call them relationships. Let's call them marriages. As soon as we put those words in, we identify the difference.
Mm-hmm. And draw more lines.
And when we draw more lines, we're more divided.
And become more of the problem.
Exactly. So I know for me, my goal is to learn as much as I can about as many people and cultures and whatever as I can. I want to be more enriched in my life and have more of that connectedness.
Yeah,
And I encourage that for others as you do.
exactly. You're going to be living your life so much more full when you can do that.
Absolutely. So it's not about interracial. It's not about cultural. Once again, it's about human. We are having human relations.
Yeah.
So hopefully something resonates with you. I know for us it resonated and started with this young lady's wonderful speech. So
Mm.
once again, highly encourage you to watch the Harvard 2025 Harvard commencement speech by the graduate.
Yeah.
And as always,
You can find us at twogirlsinapod.com. You can subscribe there. Hopefully, you've heard something that you like. You can always give us feedback on there. We love that. And then also, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey. And also, Adventures of Two Girls in a Pod is on YouTube.
and you can always pick up our coloring books at Amazon, Grateful Beginnings. You can find it under my name or Christy's name. We appreciate all of the support and we thank you so much. And we are so grateful for each and every one of you that listens. And we're grateful for your humanness.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.